Welcome to another edition of Giants, the Top 100 Players, brought to you by Bud Light. I'm Bob Papa, along with Paul Schwartz, who is one of the 13 Blue Ribbon panel members. We have with us a man who finished 87th, Corey Webster, and 89th, Jason Sehorn, as part of this Top 100. And here's how we got to the Top 100 Giants players. What we did was we looked at the over 5,000 men that wore a Giants uniform dating back to 1925. We culled that list down and came up with the top 100 players in the history of the franchise. And Paul, it was an exhilarating, interesting exercise. Obviously, it was a difficult exercise as well, but very enlightening.
Math has never been my strong suit, okay? But 5,100, that's a really big number, and that's a pretty small number. So it was very difficult. I learned a lot along the process of guys who I never saw play, guys like these two gentlemen who I did see play, and now where am I going to put them? Where are they going to fit? I think we came up with 100 great players, and there's other great players who didn't make it. You know, 100 years is a long time, and 100 players is not that many for 100 years.
Corey, I'll start with you. Your first reaction when you found out of all those people that have played this game for the Giants, with all the Hall of Famers and everything else, that you're inside that top 100.
Just a crazy feeling, you know, just blessed because, you know, the tradition is so rich, right? Like you talked about having 5,000 players and being one of those top 100 is just like no other than winning the Super Bowl, or, you know, it goes right up there with that. So to be able to represent for the guys that came before me and to leave a legacy for the guys that come behind us, so this, you know, tradition could keep going and you can still make a great legacy for this, you know, beautiful organization.
Jason, for you, leaving your mark as you did, when you put it in perspective now.
It was more of a wow moment of like, wow, okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like, you don't expect that. That's not why you play. It's more or less something that you can look back on and just go, huh. And you start doing the math and you go, wow, okay. I think that sums it up. It's like more a surprise. You know, this is an organization that started, you know, 100 years ago. So the amount of people that you've got to go through to whittle it down to 100 is pretty impressive. So to be a part of that is unique.
You know, obviously, Corey, you won 2 Super Bowls. Jason, you won an NFC championship and played in a Super Bowl. Just talk a little bit about that journey that you went on with your teammates in order to get to that point. And listen, the last pass that Brett Favre ever threw as a Green Bay Packer was intercepted by you in the NFC championship game.
Favre back to pass, takes a deep drop, steps up, looking to his right, and the pass intercepted by the Giants at the 40-yard line. Corey Webster got the pick.
But when you think about that whole journey and the 2 rings, what are some of the things that jump out at you?
Just the process, how, you know, everybody in the locker room buying in, being on one accord, putting all of the selflessness out of the way so we can go out and compete at the highest level and, you know, do something and accomplish something great like that.
Jason, when you came to the Giants, the team was kind of going through that mid-90s malaise, but you had a young group as a defense, and you won the division in 97, but then that 2000 season, it kind of all came together. What are your reflections on all of that?
As a team, we were all together. So there was not like in years prior, the defense was really good and our offense was struggling, and there was this division in the locker room. And we didn't have that. We had everybody just on the same page, doing exactly what they needed to do for us to win. And as we got to the playoffs, you know, once it was the offense and it was the defense, it was like everybody was picking up their end of the slack. And like the success model is, can you get everybody on the same page? Because they're all talented. But can you get everybody on the same page? And we were on the same page. And that's all winning is.
I mentioned Corey's iconic play against Brett Favre. You had what was voted on the greatest play in the history of Giant Stadium. Your interception, an interception return for a touchdown in the playoffs against the Philadelphia Eagles.
McNabb again over center. Drops straight back. Giants on a blitz. McNabb hit as he throws, swings it right, and the pass nearly, it is intercepted by Sehorn. He's got it on the run. Down the left sideline, cuts it at the 10. 5, touchdown!
How many times have you watched it?
Whenever someone sends it to me, I mean, I don't go back to relive it, but after that happened, I promise you for that week, I was on SportsCenter going, is it coming on again? Because we didn't have DVR back then, so I was like, is it coming on again? Great thing about that play is that it was in the playoffs. Week 3, it's just, yeah, it's a cool play, but it happened in the playoffs.
Well, you told me a story last year that you really kind of broke a lot of rules that you, as a corner,
You're not supposed to undercut a receiver, and you're not supposed to leave your feet. Like, those are 2 negatives. Do not come in front of the receiver, and do not leave your feet, because if those two things don't work, you're A, on the ground, and B, he's behind you. Like, he's gone. Do you dive for every ball during the regular season? No. You don't, because you're not really supposed to. Like, when a ball's thrown outside like that, you're supposed to just be like, okay, where's he? He's your main responsibility. Right there, I was like, I think I can get to that. So yeah, there was two no-nos broken on that play that get washed away when it works. No one says a word.
Now, a coach normally would say, no, yes.
Yes. Yeah, Coach Fox on the sideline, he's like, yeah.
I would say this, though, for that play, he answered beautifully, but to add to that, it took a lot of wherewithal, it took a lot of body control, balance, to be able to keep your presence of mind on the ball, spin around, tip it up, get back up. He was able to stand up without balancing himself on the ground and run it in down the field. That's huge. That says a lot about strength and conditioning, balance, and body control that he done off the field outside of football.
I don't know if you know this, but your former teammate and his former teammate, Michael Strahan, says the greatest athlete he's ever played with of any teammate is that guy right there. It's a pretty good compliment.
We're sitting with these two guys, and my business, we do lists, a lot of lists, right? So if you want to do lists of best postseason plays ever, your interception is on it. Your interception is on it. You know what I mean? And so, that's such a cool synergy between you two. And I always wanted to ask you, Corey, the last play of the Super Bowl, right? How many yards was Tom Brady's pass up in the air? 50, 60?
No less than 60.
What do you think? Are you thinking anything there?
I'll be honest. Before the play, I said I was going to intercept it. All right? And I misjudged the ball, to be perfectly honest.
Not the time to misjudge it.
Not the time to misjudge. And what I mean by misjudge, I still hit it. I got a finger on it, but I didn't get further enough back to get two hands on it to make the catch.
And how many seconds after that the confetti starts falling, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a beautiful feeling.
That's a beautiful feeling.
The New York Giants have won Super Bowl 42.
So there's in this grouping, there's a bunch of your former teammates. So I'm going to ask you about number 82, Kareem McKenzie. Might be the greatest free agent signing in Ernie Accorsi's career because he signed a 7-year contract and he basically played every game every year for all 7 years. Talk about getting your money's worth. He was the quiet one of that group. Some of the other ones knew where the camera was. What was Kareem like as a teammate? What made him such a great player?
Just a guy that led by example. He was a guy that had books by his locker. He was always reading, and I think now he's Dr. Kareem McKenzie, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a guy that had a plethora of knowledge and was willing to sit down with a young guy and share some of that knowledge. So outside of everything that he did great, protecting and being the leader as far as on the football field and holding down Eli's, right side as far as being a pass protector. But off the field, tremendous guy, always was learning, always was reading, and never was afraid to share the knowledge and pass it on.
I just look at people like that, though, the durability factor, if someone just shows up every single week at that position. I mean, there's something to be said about that alone, to just show up at that position every week, because they're always dinged. And linemen, they're never healthy. And it's easy for them to take a week or two off, if they want to, but to just show up and post every single week is pretty impressive.
So speaking of longevity, his teammate longevity, I want to ask you about the guy who finished 88th on this list, Howard Cross, who played the most games in the history of the Giants until Strahan broke his record, but was part of the 1990 Giants Super Bowl team, played with Bavaro, and lasted through your group and getting to another Super Bowl in 2000. Your thoughts on Howard as a player?
First of all is cheerleader, positivity. I don't think he spoke a bad word about anyone. He was always positive. He was always uplifting. He was always rah-rah for everybody all the time. It was really one of those rare moments in sports where someone just thinks positive for everyone. He was just a very motivational individual. He was fun. And he's a big man. When he would shake your hand, it engulfed you. He had the biggest hands I've ever, it just engulfed your whole hand. You're like, good Lord, if you're a defensive end, he gets those mugs on you, you're done. Yeah. He was fun.
I remember, you're in a locker room, there's offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they're big dudes. But he was a tight end, but he was big, right? When you shook his hand, his shoulders, really, he's a throwback. The tight ends now, they get the glory, a lot of them. There are blockers too, but he was a block first, block second, block third, catch a few passes. He's like an offensive lineman in the run game. No question about it. And you're right, you looked at him and you say, he is a blocker, man. He was big. Yeah, big hands.
I'm going to go to another name on this list. It's great because there's a bunch of guys that you both played with. At 84 is Ahmad Bradshaw, who, was a 7th-round pick in 2007. Injured, not really doing a lot, but down the stretch turned out to be one of the ultimate gamers and one of the ultimate teammates.
Yeah, Ahmad is a guy, I was always call him Big Back. Now, I know that was hard because who he played with and who he shared the backfield with, but he played that way. He played like a huge guy. He could do pass protect, he can block, he can catch out the backfield. It was nothing that he couldn't do, and he wasn't a guy that couldn't play on the goal line. He can get in there and, and be very physical just with any of the big backs. So I always call him Big Back. He always was tenacious as far as how he played the game, and he never let his size hold him back, and he was able to work through those injuries and have a successful career. And now he's 2 Super Bowls, and he's on the list.
But now it's very popular to say he runs angry. I mean, if you have a guy who runs angry, and then it was Ahmad Bradshaw, he ran unbelievably ticked off every single second, didn't he, Corey?
Yeah,
right? He just
himself.
looked like he was, it took offense that anyone would dare to try to tackle him.
An angry runner is someone who doesn't want to make you miss, they want to run through you.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, and he was that. I mean, I didn't play against him, but I watched him, and he was one of those guys that he wasn't trying to make you miss. No. He was trying to make you feel him.
I mean,
how often do you want to do this?
In the
Buffalo
game,
yes.
In the Buffalo game, where you guys clinched in the rain and the snow and the sleet, and that was basically his coming out with an 84-yard run. Remember that? Yep. It seemed like he ran through the sleet and the snow and the rain.
Bradshaw up the middle, finds a crease, up to the 20, 25-30, it's a foot race. Bradshaw to the 40, to midfield. No one's going to get the rookie Adam Marshall. 30, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Ahmad Bradshaw.
But then in 11, when you guys were not that good running as a team, but Ahmad kind of set the tone that the Giants' running game was back when he runs over the jet safety to kind of ice the game.
He set the tone, being able to break through the hole. I think he got to the second level quickly, and like you talked about, he wasn't trying to go around or make him miss. He went right over him. He set the tone right there, and we played physical throughout that game.
The other thing, the other play that Ahmad made that maybe people forget, but in Super Bowl 42, you guys are driving, and there's a fumble, and there's 2 Patriots on the ball, and somehow he dives in there and digs that ball out and saves the possession near the end of the first half, or maybe Brady goes down the field and but that kind of sums up Ahmad.
Yeah, that's who he is.
In a loose ball or in a fight, I want him on my side, okay? That's all there is to it.
Pick him first.
Yeah, right?
All right, so number 83 on the list is someone that you could speak to because he was like one of my favorites, Kerry Collins.
Oh, yeah.
Ernie Accorsi had the wherewithal to bring Kerry in and, had to rehab from the Carolina situation and that short time in New Orleans. What was it like when he first walked in the locker room?
So he was my roommate that first year in training camp, and he was hilarious. He's quiet. He came in humble. He came in with that idea that I need to prove myself to this team. Obviously, he knew he was talented. Everyone knew he was talented, but he came in with the idea that I've got to perform first before I can lead.
And that 2000 season, it's kind of like the light went off, right? I've had 2 stops. This is like the last resort. Mm-hmm. And, the NFC Championship game, and the Vikings are supposed to come in and handle you guys, and 41-0. And
he's throwing lasers on seam routes, like right through DBs. Yeah. When he played, when he was on, when he knew what he was doing and dialed in, man, he can throw it like nobody else. Like he could throw the best ball. Because we saw him in practice all the time. Like, you'd have somebody covered, and the ball would be like, right there. And you're like, right there. I mean, all the time. Like, it's just one of those things where, was he dialed in? When he was, he was.
Paul, another name on this list at number 85 is Dave Meggett, who was part of the Giants' Super Bowl winning team in 1990, Super Bowl 25. He was Bradshaw before Bradshaw.
Yes, I was going to say he was versatile, a guy who helps you win, right? They always say to you guys, the coach says, tell me why I should give you a uniform on game day, right? You're going to play special teams, you're going to return kicks. What are you going to do that you deserve to be one of the guys out there? I mean, Meggett had how many things he could do.
The other thing about Meggett and Bradshaw, that commonality, was they might have been as fierce a running backs as the Giants have had as far as pass protection. Like, they did not blink.
They didn't back down, no. And because they're third down backs, so for the most part. And so you're going to be in there when they're bringing pressure. So you've got to know where to go, and then you've got to man up. Like, as a running back, when linebackers are running full speed, you can't olay them. I mean, you've got to but because they run angry, they're going to block angry.
Number 81 on this list is Frank Cope. He's before all of our time, but he played for the Giants and won a championship in 1938. He was voted to the All-Decade team in the 1930s, having come into the league in 1938. But he was that good, and then was a first-team All-Pro in the 40s, played with a bunch of Hall of Famers, and was one of these guys that was really part of the foundation of what the Giants were to become as far as strong offensive lines and running attacks, and a very important figure in Giants history in the early years of this franchise.
Right, look, I saw you play your whole career. I saw you play your whole career. I can have an assessment. A lot of these guys I could. Frank Cope, obviously, I could not. Nobody on the committee could see them play. But you have to look at some things. Is he in the Hall of Fame? Did he make, awards? Did he win championships? All-decade team is it's the 30s. I mean, I can't tell you what it was like in the 30s, but if he was voted an all-decade offensive lineman in the 30s, then I have to put weight on that somebody thought he was the best of his era. And so that's why you can't throw those guys out because they didn't play when ESPN was on, or when you just can't do it. It's not fair to them.
Right, and he helped the Giants get to 5 title games.
Yeah.
In the span of that time, and was an anchor.
There's that too.
And then he was first-team All-Pro a couple times and a bunch of Pro Bowls. So another guy that we should talk about from the past. He recently passed away. Aaron Thomas, tight end for the Giants in the early '60s. He played 1 year with San Francisco, was drafted by the 49ers, but the Giants acquired him in his second season. And till this day, he has the most receiving touchdowns by a Giants tight end in franchise history with 35. But they went to the NFL championship in his first 3 years, 61, 62, 63.
Well, that's when things stick out at you. You say, well, why does he still have the record for touchdowns for tight ends, right? I mean, we talked about Howard Cross. There was Jeremy Shockey. There was, there's a bunch of
Bavaro,
Mark Bavaro. Yeah, Mark Bavaro. Yeah, he's not a bad player. Yeah, and why does he have the record? Well, in an era where maybe they didn't throw as much, well, that elevates him in our mind. He was a great player for the short period of time.
It's interesting because in the early 60s, the Giants were, believe it or not, a passing team. Yep. In fact, Y.A. Tittle's numbers from 1963, his touchdown passes, 36 in one season. That record stood until Marino broke it in '84.
The numbers stick out. They definitely do. But he was basically like a receiver. So, if his record's standing all these years, then, there's something there.
The other person in this group is another corner, Erich Barnes. He's another guy, played for the franchise for 4 years, but he went to 3 title games, and in 3 of the 4 years, he was named All-Pro. So again, when you're talking about the history of the Giants and greatness, Erich Barnes certainly belongs in that top 100. Moments for you, Jason. Obviously, we talked about the interception against Philadelphia, but when you kind of look back at, in totality, being a New York Giant, you played for a couple different coaches. You had John Fox as a defensive coordinator, which I know was very influential to that entire group. But what are some of the things that you remember most about being a Giant and that famous phrase, once a Giant, always a Giant?
Probably the stadium, understanding that they're going to show up whether you're good or bad, but they're going to show up. A lot of places you go around the league, they don't show. It's empty. This place was full. Here, you just realize everybody was passionate about your team, which made it so much more fun to be a part of. When I first came to New York, I learned to really love playing here. I appreciate the fact that I was drafted by the Giants. When you walk around the streets, people are passionate about you and their team. For me, looking back on everything, it's just being here, getting to do what I got to do in New York instead of someplace else.
About for you, Corey?
Yeah, I would agree. This is a great city to be in the position to compete, and when you have success, they're going to celebrate you. Having success here in New York is like no other, so I enjoyed being a Giant, only a Giant. I didn't even think about playing anywhere else.
Paul, it's been fun.
Yeah, no, it's look, I said I covered both these guys, and they were a little quieter, a little less quiet, but they both, most of the interviews I did with these guys was asking them about why were you successful against this? Why are you successful against that? So, instead of why did you give up a touchdown? Why did you not do this? I mean, 20 interceptions and 19, is that right? Okay, almost 40 interceptions sitting here. Not bad.
Gentlemen, we appreciate you. Congratulations on being the top 100. For Paul Schwartz, Jason Sehorn, and Corey Webster, I'm Bob Papa. Make sure you check out all the Giants media platforms as we continue our countdown to #1 and bring you these wonderful sit-downs and conversations here on Giants Top 100 Players, brought to you by Bud Light.